All right, so this is the fifth time that I have flown this, so we're gonna take off here and so I have to admit now that I've been this will be my fifth approach that I've shot. Hopefully, I won't mess it up, but I was gonna shoot 10, but I've shot two that were pretty good, so I wanted to kind of. So a few things that I've learned about the simulator is you definitely learn to fly this thing with a very very light hand because it the trim is probably my biggest uh, complaint with the entire simulator because it's just you can't it's not immediate, so you flip the trim and you may or may not get any kind of reaction, and then by the time you do start getting a reaction, it's heading off in the opposite direction. So that's something that I don't know. Like right now, I'm trying to get the rudder trim to trim out the way I want it. But once you kind of get the feel for the trim, it's not a too terribly difficult thing to deal with, and it, you know, I can see how doing this a lot would definitely help me out because it's more sensitive than the airplane. So if you can fly this, you definitely can fly the airplane. And two, you get used to your scan and trying to get everything flowing the way that you want it without having to waste gas. So I think that I am definitely, now that I'm slowly starting to get the hang of it, I may flip it back over and start flying the Beech 18 again, because I do have a Beech 18 simulator that I've been working with. So I'm going to shoot a few more approaches with the 172, and then once I've kind of gotten it where I feel pretty good about what's going on, I'll flip back over and we'll try the Beech 18 simulator and see how it goes. So the left-right adjustment that I am having an issue with is your 0 trims it over to the right, and your number 8 trims it back to the left. So you kind of have to play with it for a minute to get it right. And it seems like every flight that I go on, I have to go back in and deal with that again. So what I am doing now is we're up to 3,000 feet here, just about. So we're going to go ahead and push the nose forward a little bit, and then I'm going to trim it to try to get it to sit on 3,000 feet. So for a minute, I'm going to fly with the stick just to kind of feel out what's happening. So I'm still climbing. So what I do is I push the nose back over on the horizon, and then I will, because like right now we're still climbing, and actually I forgot, we need to put this on about 2,300 RPM. forgot to pick the flaps up from my earlier landing. So that's cool. All right, so we're gonna get this thing flying close to level flight like we want it. So for a little bit, so I've got a little bit too much rudder trim and it keeps wanting to turn to the right, so I'm hitting the number 8 key to try to get that worked out. My vertical speed is close. I'm still kind of trimming down a little bit. My RPM went back up for some. I really don't know why I get an RPM creep like I do. That's a little bit irritating. All right, so now we've got a little bit nose down trim, so I've still got a little bit of a right rudder tendency there, or right aileron. So we're gonna try to get this thing to get back up here where we want it. We still got a little bit of a nose down. Now my speed, my RPM's going the other way. So get her back up here to 3,000 feet. Everything's looking pretty good. All right. So we're still wanting to descend. All right, so while that's doing that, we're going to go ahead and hit procedure, load. We're going to keep shooting this one approach until we get really good at it. Vectors, and then we're going to go ahead and activate it. All right, so there's our Synfo. We're going to leave that up on the screen over there so we've got access to that. So you can kind of follow along a little bit better. And so now we're hanging in pretty good at 3,000 feet. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to start, we're almost out here to Synfo, so we're going to start turning a little bit more toward our final course, or parallel to our final course, so we don't get any farther away from it. And then we're going to pass Synfo. RPM is crept up a tiny bit, but not too bad. We're going to keep flying out here until we pass Synfo, and then we're going to start the approach. And in real life, we wouldn't shoot this so tight, but for the sake of not making the video too terribly long, I'm trying to do the whole course. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to hold our 3,000 feet, and then we're going to start turning in here toward Synfo. And what I'm really going to do is I'm going to turn a little bit more than 90 degrees off of my localizer course, and then we're going to use the localizer on our instrument right here to tell us when to start turning on our final course. So right now we'll level out about right there, because we still want to come in outside of Sinfo. All right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to keep flying this heading until we start to see our localizer start to swing. That's going to tell us to start our turn. Other than that, all we're doing is pretty much trying to hold our altitude. So I'm going to try to get the trim set so that it does a fairly good job of holding that. I'm going to pull back on our RPM just a little bit. So we're going to put a little bit of back trim in to hold us where we're at. And we're just going to sit here and wait for that localizer to start swinging. Now I'm going to, because I'm outside of Sinfo and I'm getting a little bit close to our localizer, I'm going to turn a little bit more, holding everything else the way it is. And the reason for that is I don't want to have to turn, I'd like to turn 45 degrees or so to get on that course so we don't have to turn quite so sharp. So we'll level out somewhere in here. And then we're just going to kind of hold our own here. All right, so the localizer needle's starting to swing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start our turn around here to 300 degrees, and we're going to try to get it timed where when we level out, we're on the localizer. Again, we're going to hold 3,000 feet until we're established. All right, so now we're a little bit, we turned a little tight. We're a little to the left, so we're going to turn about 10 degrees left to course here, and then we're just going to hold this. Now at this point we can come down to 2,200 feet, so we're going to let the nose come on down and let her start losing a little bit of altitude. I don't want to go too fast, and you'll notice we're a little to the left of course. We want to be on 300 degrees, but we're a little to the left because we want to get back over on our course, but we don't want to do it too quick, because if you do it too quick, then we're chasing ourselves back and forth. And we want to keep it coming down. So now, because we've about got the trim where we want it, we're bringing the localizer in. It also looks like our DG is off a little bit, so we want to fix that. So we're going to get that more in line with where it's at. So we actually want to come a little bit more to the left. A little more. All right, so that's got us headed to the left of our course, so we should start to swing that localizer. You'll also notice that our glide slope is starting to come in. We haven't gotten down to 200 feet yet, so we'll keep the nose coming down. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use, instead of pushing the stick forward and pulling it back, what we're going to do is we're going to try to get everything where we want it, and then we're going to use the power to hold our altitude or to lose our altitude. So we're not going to chase the glide slope with the stick. We're going to use the power to do that. So I want to move just a little bit more to the left here. I'm also going to slide down so we can't see. All right, so we're going to hold what we got. Localizer starting to come in. We got a little bit low, so I'm going to pull it back up here. We want to be at 2,200 feet. So again, we're using our power to do what we got to do. So the localizer's starting to come in. So as soon as the localizer gets there in the middle, we're going to start turning back to our 300 degrees. So we'll turn a little bit to the right now. So now the localizer is dead on, so we want to be right on 300 degrees. We still want to hold our altitude though, as we're watching for that glide slope to start coming in, and that's going to happen at Pumo. So we're going to kind of hold what we got here. I'm adding a little bit of power to help hold the altitude. Again, now I'm getting a little to the left of course, and that's that rudder trim that or the aileron trim that just kind of keeps rolling me. All right, so glide slope is starting to come in. Airport's dead ahead. And try to stay on 300 degrees now. All right, so now as the glide slope is coming in, we're at Pumo. So we're going to get a notch of flaps. And now we're going to use the throttle. We're hitting it. I don't know why this thing is. All right. So I don't want to get too fast of a descent. This is an example of what drives me crazy, because I mean I'm not doing anything and the thing's going from 1500 to 1500, but it should come back to. All right, we're looking for 900, so I'm high, so I'm gonna pull the throttle off a little bit more. And see, that stupid thing is I pull the throttle off and it starts to climb. That's totally. What I've noticed is that this thing is very difficult to fly, period. But I think in the long run, if you can shoot a halfway decent approach using this simulator, you could probably shoot any approach in an actual airplane, because this thing totally does not fly very realistically at all. I mean, we ought to be descending like crazy right now with the way I've got everything trimmed up, and it's just, this thing's crazy. But we got the glide slope. You can see the two needles over there like crosshairs, and they're perfectly square with each other.
1 mile final runway 30.
I'm getting a little low, so I'm gonna add power. We're looking for 1,000 feet. It's 998 feet. So I'm a little low. So at this point we're getting high, so, and then we'll get another notch of flaps. So you can see it's still, you know, I've shot a couple of these approaches that were dead on. I didn't have any problem at all with it. And then I've shot, you know, this one where I ended up having a fight with it a little bit, but without looking out the window or doing anything crazy, we ended up catching, getting everything back under control. So the trick to flying the simulator to practice what you're doing is really very small control changes, and try not to get it chasing itself, because it'll get totally wiggy if you move the control stick hardly any at all. So as long as you're using very small changes and keep everything smooth, it doesn't do a bad job of letting you practice.